When people talk about the richest individuals in history, three names often come up: Elon Musk, Julius Caesar, and Alexander the Great. But who was actually the richest? At first, the answer might seem obvious, but comparing a modern billionaire to people who lived more than 2,000 years ago isn't that simple. They lived in different economies, used different currencies, and accumulated wealth in completely different ways. So instead of relying on internet rankings, we decided to do our own research. We gathered historical evidence, compared the available data, and created one consistent method to evaluate all three. For each of them, we'll estimate the value of the assets they personally controlled, convert that wealth into gold, and calculate how many soldiers they could pay for an entire year. Using the same method for everyone, we'll build our own ranking and answer one question: who was truly the richest? Let's start with Elon Musk. In June 2026, following SpaceX's IPO, his net worth surpassed $1 trillion for the first time in history. But for our comparison, dollars don't tell the whole story. So first, we'll convert his wealth into something far more universal: gold. At a gold price of around $4,000 per troy ounce, $1 trillion is equal to approximately 7,800 metric tons of gold. That's the figure we'll use throughout this video. But the amount of gold alone doesn't fully show the scale of such wealth. So let's compare it to military salaries. Based on the average annual salary of a U.S. service member, Elon Musk's fortune could pay the annual salaries of roughly 20 million soldiers. That's the benchmark our next two contenders will have to beat. Now let's move on to Julius Caesar. Right away, it's important to point out that comparing Caesar to Elon Musk is much more complicated. At the time of his death, Caesar was not an emperor in the modern sense. Rome was still a republic, with a state treasury, a powerful senate, and many extremely wealthy aristocratic families. That's why we'll only estimate Caesar's personal wealth. First, let's convert Roman currency into something easier to understand. 100 sesterces were equal to 1 aureus, a gold coin weighing about 8 grams. The average Roman legionary earned around 900 sesterces per year. Now let's look at the historical facts. The richest man in Rome, Marcus Licinius Crassus, was estimated to have a fortune of around 200 million sesterces. After his eastern campaigns, Pompey brought approximately 480 million sesterces into the Roman state treasury and paid enormous bonuses to his army. Caesar himself once gave his lover, Servilia, a single pearl worth about 6 million sesterces. To build his famous forum, he purchased land for roughly 100 million sesterces. It's also well documented that Caesar owned luxurious gardens, villas, estates, and other valuable properties. Before his death, Caesar's will granted 300 sesterces to each of approximately 250,000 Roman citizens. The total value of those payments was about 75 million sesterces. 3/4 of his estate went to his adopted heir, Octavian, while the remaining quarter was inherited by other relatives. To this day, historians cannot determine the exact value of Caesar's fortune. So, after collecting all the available historical evidence, we made our own estimate. Based on our research, we believe Julius Caesar's personal fortune was approximately 200 million sesterces. That's equivalent to roughly 16 metric tons of gold. However, comparing those 16 tons directly to Elon Musk's 7,800 tons of gold wouldn't be entirely fair. In Caesar's time, gold was far more valuable than it is today. It was much harder to mine, much rarer, and every gram had significantly greater purchasing power. For example, the annual salary of a Roman legionary was equivalent to only about 72 grams of gold. Today, the average annual salary of a U.S. service member is worth roughly 500 grams of gold. That's why throughout this video, we'll compare not only the physical amount of gold, but also what that wealth actually meant in the economy of its own time. Measured by the military spending of his era, Caesar's fortune could pay the annual salaries of approximately 222,000 Roman legionaries. Now let's move on to Alexander the Great. Unlike Julius Caesar, Alexander was an absolute monarch. He did not rule a republic. He was the king of Macedon and later the ruler of the vast Persian Empire. That meant Alexander personally controlled the royal treasury. He alone decided how to distribute war spoils, fund military campaigns, build new cities, and spend the wealth under his control. At the beginning of his campaign against Persia, his own treasury was relatively small, around 60 talents. But within just a few years, everything changed. After defeating the Persian Empire, Alexander gained control of the greatest royal treasuries of the ancient world. According to historical estimates, the total value of the captured treasure was around 200,000 talents of precious metals. To put that into perspective, that's roughly 1,000 times more wealth than the Macedonian treasury held when Alexander first began his campaign. But what exactly is a talent? A talent was not a coin. It was a unit of weight used in the ancient world to measure gold and silver. One talent weighed about 26 kilograms and was also equal to 6,000 drachmas, the standard silver currency of ancient Greece. An ordinary Macedonian soldier earned about 1 drachma per day. That means a single talent was enough to pay the annual salary of roughly 16 soldiers. As a result, 200,000 talents could pay more than 3 million annual military salaries. Or, to put it another way, that amount of wealth could fund Alexander's army of about 40,000 men for more than 80 years. In terms of physical weight, 200,000 talents correspond to approximately 5,200 metric tons of precious metals. Of course, not all of this wealth was Alexander's personal cash. A large portion was used to govern his vast empire, finance military campaigns, and build new cities. However, Alexander alone had the authority to decide how those resources would be used. For that reason, in our comparison, we'll use the full amount of 200,000 talents, the wealth that was under Alexander's direct control at the height of his power. Now it's time for the final results. In third place is Julius Caesar. Based on our estimates, his personal fortune was around 200 million sesterces. That's equivalent to approximately 16 metric tons of gold, or enough to pay about 222,000 Roman legionaries for an entire year. In second place is Alexander the Great. At the height of his power, he controlled around 200,000 talents of precious metals, approximately 5,200 metric tons, or enough to pay more than 3 million Macedonian soldiers for an entire year. And in first place is Elon Musk. With a net worth of over $1 trillion, his assets are equivalent to roughly 7,800 metric tons of gold, or nearly 20 million annual salaries of modern U.S. service members. According to our calculations, Elon Musk is the richest of the three. Of course, no comparison like this can ever be perfectly precise, but using one consistent methodology and the best historical evidence available, this is the ranking we arrived at. Do you agree with our estimates? Let us know what you think in the comments.